was going to be time sooner or later that the Knicks were going to get boat raced, and that's exactly what happened yesterday. So I'm not surprised by it. And, of course, everything this morning is about how exhausted they are, how they need rest, and Thibodeau is working them too hard. I mean, the problem with them is injuries. That is the number one problem. We all know that Jalen Brunson, their most important player, is playing with some sort of injury to his foot. And then when I think back to Game 3, they had a chance to win this game 15 ways to Sunday. And with under 3 minutes to go, McBride, who has been less than stellar in this series, misses a 28-foot jumper to put him up by 2. Brunson and Hart both miss front ends of 2 free throws. There's the DiVincenzo goaltending on a shot that was not going to go in. There was the not goaltending on Miles Turner on the Hart layup. I mean, so all of these things happened within the last 3 minutes of the game. Yep. And you think back to that game, you're saying that's where they could have, I don't want to even say stole it. I thought they got run out of the gym the first quarter, but after that, they settled down, they fought back, and every one of us who have watched them throughout the entire season said that's the Knicks team that we know, even without Anunoby on the court. These were the 5 guys that kept this team right around 500 through the month of February. And I think, and I believe, that they will get a lot of energy from the Garden faithful come Tuesday night.
Yeah, of course. And this is going to be a critical Game 5. It's the first time you've really felt like they've been in trouble and an opponent is creeping on them and having an advantage. There was no point in the 76ers series where I felt like Philadelphia had any sort of advantage in that series. In the first 3 games of this series, I didn't feel like the Pacers had an advantage on the Knicks. But even though this game is at the Garden, the Pacers are going to come in fully confident. And I don't want to see or hear, which I did yesterday, like, people are taking they were taking the Pacers too lightly and this and that. Stop. The Knicks are not the same team that they were in the beginning of this series. And that's not an excuse at all. It's an explanation as to why this series is where it is. They're missing one of their best defenders and key player in OG Anunoby, who has not played, obviously. Jalen Brunson clearly isn't 100%. And they also lost Mitchell Robinson after Game 1 in this series. So now you got to go into the bench. You see Jericho Sims out there who hasn't played in God knows how long, and he's sitting there. He doesn't even know how to dribble the ball into the front court. And then he gets the 8-second violation at one point yesterday. I mean, so these guys that have not played, Alec Burks, who has actually done a decent job, but you hadn't seen him in forever. I mean, so in Precious Achiuwa getting more minutes than he's ever gotten. So they have to go to this bench when they don't have a ton of depth, and they've gotten really, really bad breaks with injuries. And that's why we are where we are more than anything.
Game 3 was the Dante DiVincenzo game.
Yes.
He stepped up. He had a great game. That was the game that they had to win if they were going to win one in Indianapolis. I don't think they'll win one in Indianapolis. I think that they have a very good shot of becoming the Knicks team that we saw in Game 5. I do. I really do. I mean, yesterday's game, you flush it. You forget about it. You flush it. The fourth quarter was all the reserves. At least Thibodeau recognized that the game was lost, and he tried to, rest his guys. And looks like Hartenstein's shoulder's going to be fine.
Well, yes, I hope so. Now, obviously,
the X-rays were negative, and he'll get treatment today, and he got treatment yesterday, and believe me, these guys will be ready to go come tomorrow night. They will be ready. I think they'll be ready. That's just who they are. They just had an awful first quarter again, and Rick Carlisle's strategy of running them out of the gym worked yesterday. It did work yesterday.
They were shooting 70% in the first quarter. I've never seen anything like it.
And I really think back to that Game 3, when Nemert makes that three-pointer, that's where this whole thing changed.
Yeah.
He hoists up a three-pointer with 1 second on the shot clock from about 38 feet, and he makes it. And that's kind of where the game and this series took a shift turn, or a major turn right there. And there's a million things that got them to that point, but that made three-point shot. And then I don't know what Brunson was doing, coming down at the end of the game, trying to 1 foot off the three-point line around 3 guys as opposed to dishing it to somebody. But I don't necessarily know that there was anybody to dish it to, because nobody's really hitting threes, except for DiVincenzo. But to me, it's that Game 3 was the opportunity, and that three-pointer at the end by Indiana was to me was like the dagger, because after that it was like frenetic. People were missing shots, and it just missing free throws and everything. It was just a really sad ending to Game 3. Yesterday, I want to flush. I don't even want to talk about it. But I know one thing. This team, all year long, we've watched it. All year long. And they've had moments like this, but somehow, some way, they have had the resiliency to come back and play. So there is something to be said about a little bit of revenge factor, getting in front of your fans, maybe getting some of the calls that you didn't get, which is amazing to me. The NBA officiating is so infuriatingly inconsistent, and that's for both teams, not just for the Knicks, but for both teams. And I know the Pacers were crowing about it after the first 2 games. The Knicks can crow about it at least after Game 3, not so much yesterday. I mean, yesterday was a game where they looked like they were like totally out of it after about 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah, and I know that for the Knicks, they have to flush yesterday and not think about it and not let this spiral. But just from a standpoint of being a fan and what I expect from them tomorrow night, I don't know if I just want to move on from it. I think there was some major issues with them yesterday that I hadn't seen in a very long time. I mean, and I don't think that they're done. I don't think that they're cooked. I don't think that they're too tired, fatigued, and finished, and they're just going to not win another game. But I could listen to that case. I could. Someone could sit there and try to convince me that we're not going to see the same Knicks team again after a heartbreaking loss in Game 3 and then getting blown out in Game 4, especially if you're telling me that we're not going to see Anunoby at all for the rest of the series, which is a possibility. Hartenstein's now banged up himself, and Jalen Brunson clearly is not 100%. I mean, this is... I need to see them come out and be that. It used to be a given that they were always going to bounce back and be there in the full confidence. Now they got to prove it to me again after what happened yesterday.
Well, the other problem was, especially early in the game, because it started to even itself out late in the game, but that doesn't really matter, but was the 3-point discrepancy. So Indianapolis ends up with 14 made three-pointers. The Knicks only 7. And at one point in the third quarter, I think they only had 2 out of 25, attempts.
Well, yeah,
at that 3-point. I mean, it was Clank City. It was Brick City, and the Pacers were making theirs. And I look at the 3-point field goal percentage: 19% for the Knicks, 45% for the Pacers, and that's a big part of all of that stuff. The other thing that happened in Game 3, just to go back to that for 1 second, was Miles Turner late in the game, offensive rebounds. The block on Hart's layup that I thought was going to be defensive goaltending. He made 3 or 4 plays within the last 2 minutes of the game that had nothing to do with scoring the basketball. It had everything with rebounding the basketball on the offensive glass, which is what the Knicks have been known for. And when Anunoby's not around,
and Mitchell Robinson
are not around, it's a big problem. And those extra tries that the Pacers are getting on offense late in that particular game were also like excruciating just watching that. So,
yeah, I mean,
yesterday's game, forget it. I just forget it. It was Game 5 to me where they had a chance.
Game 3.
I mean, Game 3, they had a chance. But Game 5, they're going to be ready. They will be ready. You'll see. They will be ready.
I'm glad you're confident, and I'm not going to be negative with them because I haven't been this entire time. But I just that same big roaring confidence that I've had with them was sort of sucked out of me yesterday. It was just so frustrating watching that first quarter and just the crowd going crazy. Every shot that they put up went in. Obi Toppin, big dunks and 3-pointers. Miles Turner's got 2 guys on him, has to hoist up a 3, basically half jumping in the air with one hand as the shot clock expires. It goes in.
Yeah, they had one of those days that everything went in for them yesterday, and nothing went in for the Knicks. And this team, and I'm not giving up on this team, no matter how many injuries they have. And there is a toughness about them that we all admire. It's one of the reasons why we like watching them. Is because, we know that they are shorthanded. We've known that since Julius Randle went out. And that's one of the reasons why I think we all like them so much is because they've overcome that. They've overcome different injuries during the season. Now playing with injury, that's a little different.
Well, and that's probably the biggest point here. Anunoby's absence is humongous, but the fact that, is Jalen Brunson capable of where he is physically right now to have another one of these 40-point games where he's the best player on the court?
What he needs is the support from DiVincenzo. That's what he needs. And, McBride, like I said, hasn't been great with his shooting either. But DiVincenzo has to be the guy that's going to pick up the offensive slack. And that's why Game 3 was so important. He had that game, and he did support, and he was making threes, and he was keeping them close. And then they take a lead. I mean, it was crazy how, here's this beat-up Knicks team on the road in the fourth quarter with a 9-point lead. I think it was a 9-point lead.
Yeah, 9-point lead with about 10 and change.
Yeah, and we know that those leads usually don't hold up. Now, if that's a 35-point lead, it's a different story. But a 9-point lead in the fourth quarter with 11 minutes or 9 minutes and change left, that's nothing. Any team can go back from that. And you knew it was going to be a tight one at the end. And then I just went over these plays that – and I remember looking back at the whole play sheet and everything else going, man, this is where the game was lost. I mean, free throws missed, three-pointers missed, wide-open three-pointers missed, and then a strange, weird attempt to try to tie the game late after Nember makes his three-pointer, and then Jalen comes back and forces an issue that didn't make any sense to me. That was a little helter-skelter in my eyes, and there was no plan in place. It seemed like whatever – I think Tibbs probably called a timeout and set everybody down and said, just get the ball to Jones and he'll do something. I'm like, can we get an open three
there's been a couple of those times where you can't win when you're the star that Jalen Brunson has been, where it's either like, okay, you're supposed to take over, you're supposed to be the guy that has the ball in his hands, but then you do something like that, and you're like, well, why the hell you didn't pass it? And then if he has the ball in his hands and he passes it to somebody and then that guy misses the shot, it's like, well, why didn't you take the shot? You're the superstar.
Yeah, but if the guy is open,
I know, this was a really bad one.
So I always said that I admired LeBron James when he was late in his career, and even now, is that he's not afraid to take the shot, and he's certainly not afraid to give it to an open teammate to make the shot. And it's up to that teammate. In that game, in Game 3, DiVincenzo was the hot one. Oh, yeah. He was the one that was making shots. Mm-hmm. So I would have thought, I was thinking that, and I understand what they were trying to do. Maybe Brunson gets a 4-point play. Maybe he gets 3 free throws, but his free throw shooting has been inconsistent at best.
Yeah, and which is obviously going to be a problem when you've got these late close games like you had in games 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, in Game 3, if the Knicks end up losing this series, that's all we're going to be thinking about over and over and over again is how close they were to taking a 3-0 lead in Game 3. I mean, that's going to be that turning point. It's going to be the long three-pointer. It's going to be the missed free throws. It's going to be that Brunson possession. Those are the things that you'll remember the entire offseason if they somehow end up losing this series, is how close they were to taking that commanding 3-0 lead and basically ending the series right then.
I was thinking about it right there at about 3 minutes to go in the game, and the Pacers were up 102-101. And that's where McBride misses his shot. Then Hart makes 1 of 2 free throws, ties the score at 102. Hart steals the ball, and then Miles Turner blocks his layup, which how close was that to goaltending?
Goaltending, yeah.
All right, and then you have Brunson misses 1 of 2 free throws. It's 104-103 Indy. And then Brunson at the 1 minute mark misses a jumper. It's still 103-104. And then right after that, after Brunson misses that, this is where the DiVincenzo goaltending happens. And it goes 106-103 at that point. And then Brunson does drop a 3, and he ties it at 106. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you have that Nemard 3-point shot out of nowhere. And then I don't know what the hell that last shot was for the Knicks. And then Naismith makes 2 free throws and ices the game.
Yep.
See, he made his free throws. That's how you ice these games. You got to make those late game free throws. Unbelievable.
Yeah, frustrating as it can be. Game 3, and then yesterday was just I didn't watch the fourth quarter. I don't know if you watched the fourth quarter. I was done, moved on. Ended up watching Rory McIlroy finish off a great round at the Byron Nelson. That's where I was at the fourth quarter, which I don't want to be on Tuesday night. That's for sure.
And as far as the Rangers are concerned, they played a horrendous first 10 minutes of their game against Carolina on Saturday night, and then they got the game right, and they had about 5 or 6 grade A chances that they just didn't bury. It's unbelievable that they couldn't bury these chances. They tie the game late. Lindgren takes the penalty. But what was really shocking to me was just how MIA Artemi Panarin was in this game. He was a -3 in this game. He had 1 shot on goal. and it looked like the puck was just not finding him, and it was hopping over his stick and everything else. And, if he's not involved, then, these games are going to be tight, of course. But I do think that he will be involved tonight, and they will come out and they will try to do the Hurricanes what the Hurricanes did to them in the first period on Saturday night. And that is blitz them and get on their ass as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that was real true desperation by the Hurricanes early on in the game, and it still almost was a Ranger victory in this game, which just shows you how much of an advantage they've had for most of this series. So, yeah, it should and hopefully does end tonight at the Garden with the Rangers and the Hurricanes, and they could focus on the conference final right after that.